Good afternoon all. So, as said before, my name is Nick Caton from CCS. I am one of 4 commercial directors within CCS who look after certain categories. I look after our buildings category, which is facilities management, clearly, property and construction, and energy. So I've quite a vested interest in this today. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is collaboration and how we are changing and moving forward of how we work with the marketplace, how we work with our internal customers, how we work with other stakeholders. It's okay? So John Manzoni, for those of you who aren't that linked to government, is the Chief Executive of the Civil Service. He uses the phrase big people collaborate. So he wants to build a civil service full of big people rather than small people. So it's a real key piece. I think historically, Cabinet Office in particular and Crown Commercial Service of old, which was Government Procurement Service, have looked to control, and actually we haven't always been an enabler. So as we evolve and as we change, the ability of collaboration with our end customers and with the marketplace, of which some of you are in here today, is a key outcome for us. So just a couple of key facts about government that you may not be aware of. So CCS last year drove £6 billion worth of savings against a 10-11 baseline. We spend as government, and we spend your money and mine, we spend £160 billion on goods and services every year, which, just to put that into context, I used to work for AstraZeneca, the drug company. That's 8 times their revenue. So global tier 1 pharma, we spend 8 times that on goods and services. Forget headcount, just on external expenditure. Hence the reason us collaborating with the marketplace is important for all of us as taxpayers and receivers of public services. So CCS spent, of your money and mine, £15 billion last year, and 2 million under direct managed service. So we have contractual frameworks, money washes through us, but the £2 billion we actually touch, involve ourselves, and very closely manage. So 61% of our 2,500 suppliers are small businesses. So when you count the number of small businesses in Britain, 99.7% of all businesses are classed as small, and that's circa 250 FTE and a turnover threshold. 500 supplier contracts managed on behalf of our customers. So our categories and our want of being, it's all about common goods and services. So for me, the buildings area, then there's people, so contingent labour and consultancy, corporate services, everything from travel to marketing to fleet, and technology. So they're the common goods and services that CCS manage, and we manage over 500 supplier contracts for those. And we undertook, it's actually not far off 2,000 procurements last year. Most of those, well, all of those above OG threshold for obvious reasons, and some of them in the hundreds of millions of pounds, be them frameworks or direct contracts. So our customers, we have near enough 15,000 customers across the central government, wider public sector. So we are set up to deliver service to central government, and they're the 17 central government departments, which are big enough to be a FTSE 40, FTSE 20 company on their own, each one of them. So, the likes of MOD are a FTSE 5, FTSE 10, the size of their expenditure, headcount, etc. So do not underestimate, and I'm sure some of you who do not underestimate how complex and how significant it can be to work with government. We also have business partners, which are in effect, who's an account director here in a sales type role? We've got a couple there. Yep, so they're in effect the same for CCS. So they're either speaking to everybody from local authorities, NHS Trust, central government, and they're in effect out in the marketplace. And it's an odd phrase for a government department to use, but bringing in business. Because we see it important that if you're a local authority or a primary school and you use a CCS contract vehicle and you benefit from the aggregation that we bring, it should be really good for you. Because, so I spend £2.3 billion a year on energy. If you're a primary school in the little Cheshire village that I live in and you buy your energy through us, logic dictates it should be cheaper than if you went onto the open market. So that's what these business partner roles do. They also manage that customer relationship, and they bring back to people like me, actually DWP's strategic goals next year are this. So let's take HMRC, big digitisation agenda, who's been into a tax office in the last few years? Not many of us. So actually, how they drive digital and what that means for their estate is material. Me understanding that end strategy, I can't probably understand 17 central government departments' end strategies and all the wider public sector and every single local authority and school. It's quite difficult that. I'm quite small mind. So, that's their role, to collate that and help us translate that into category strategies. So any questions generally? I'm happy as we go. Yep. Can you just say where you're from, please? Because it would help me.
Oh, sorry, Irene Martin Shell.
Hi.
When you're talking about the fact that you work with a lot of small businesses, the government has targets to continue working to a certain level with small businesses.
Yep.
How does that work in the way that you then, as we all do, aggregate things up to then get much better contracts and better pricing?
So in the Conservative manifesto, they were very clear that it was a 33% target of both direct and indirect expenditure. So I look after construction, 95% of that is indirect. To small and medium businesses, a £5 million construction contract, as we all know, it sounds a lot when you're talking an FM outsource contract, but it's probably a toilet block in construction world. So, we look at the whole suite across direct and indirect. How do we incentivize small businesses? So I'll take my project management for design team services deal we're trying to do. So the way we've created that, we've created a one-stop shop, which will likely attract the likes of Faithful and Gould, Mott MacDonald, the big consultancy type companies. We've also then specialised, because our customers have asked, I might just want to appoint a project manager, I might just want to appoint an architect. So we've then broken that into specific lots for those very specific niche services on a regional basis. And marketplace feedback is, the big guys are going, I want tier one, but we've excluded them from the niche lots if they are successful in the tier one. So in the one-stop shop. And that's quite, it's quite a change that for government to say, you cannot do this. And that's how we bring small businesses into it. And actually our end, particularly in architects, as I'm sure some of you know, Team Ricks is here, it's a very localized business. And actually end customers are saying, I want to use the guy down the road because he understands my landscape, he understands the social problems I have, et cetera, particularly if you're a city council. So that's how we're doing it. And it's not positive discrimination, it's just being cognizant of it. And actually, what drives the economy? Small businesses turning into big businesses. That's what drives the UK economy right now, and it will continue to for years. So, does that answer the question?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so how do we collaborate to drive improved savings? Let's be honest, there is a deficit. Tax receipts are lower than public expenditure. We may all think that public expenditure is going down. It's not. Since 2007, it's continued to double year on year. 2001, it was the big uptick, and tax receipts followed it. So I can take you through some very exciting macroeconomic principles, but I won't. But let's be clear, public expenditure has continued to rise and will continue to rise. So even though our perception is probably that it isn't, it is doing. So what's that driven is there's a deficit, so we need to find identified savings. Part of that is through procurement efficiency, and by that I don't mean, dear suppliers, I know your margin's 9%, please can you make it 7%? Because that's very easy to do. It bores me to tears. It's not actually about delivering value. It's about delivering. How do we change service delivery? How do we look at doing things very differently? How do we look at demand? How do we look at the estate we have? Because if you think we own a lot of it, and it's very old, and actually you don't always see the cost of property. So look at, down the road. I'm based in Whitehall today. I'm sitting in a beautiful PFI building at One Horse Guards Road. Yes, that's PFI, but a lot of them we own. And you don't see that depreciation cost because it's depreciated 100 years ago. So, that's just the nature of the beast. So how do we drive savings for government? How do we help hit what is coming? The spending review coming. So the big piece is the supplier innovation and management. We see between 10 and 25% of savings driven by that. We can only do that by working together. Because I can sit in a dark box with my small FM team and think, right, this is how we do supplier innovation, and send you lots of ideas by email. And you can come back to me and go, great, isn't the reason you outsourced because we're the specialists in it? And you are the speed data between your end customer and us. And that's in effect a procurement role. So the procurement role, we're just speed daters, with a filter sometimes, where end suppliers can come and have a conversation with us and say, this isn't working for me, but I don't want to lose my relationship. Great, let us manage that. Or I've got a really great idea, I've not been able to get it across the line. Or I've got a really great idea and I have got it across the line, can we write a contract for it? Because currently the great idea, I'm not seeing any benefit and I'm doing all the work. So, there's a real, that collaboration, which is obviously the topic of today, is how do we drive those savings by that real change in delivery and that real change in thinking. And there's the other piece, marketplace efficiency. It's a weird phrase that, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? But marketplace efficiency, how do we make you efficient bidding for government? Because we're not right now. It's a difficult, long process. Part of that's the law, and I can't do much about that, but part of that's how we design the process. So how do we design bringing companies into market, and how do we make sure that when the market does bid for work, that we do it in a sensible way. So for example, in FM, we've clustered a number of central government departments together. Currently we have 3,500 FM contracts. The plan is we'll have 20. So if that isn't marketplace efficiency, I should go home and try again. But that's the sort of things that we're doing because that clusters demand. Reprocurement, aggregation, channeling more spend. It's all of these require a collaborative way of working for us to move forward. Is there a question? Sorry, I thought you had a question.
It's brilliant.
Okay. Here we go. So, collaborative behaviours, there are some there. I'm not going to touch on every one of them, but it's to demonstrate that we're thinking about it. So, high levels of corporate responsibility, innovative through proposals. To deal effectively as CCS as one customer. So, the crown is your end customers for the suppliers in the room, and we're trying to make sure that we act as one and we speak with one voice. Yes, departments will have their own different flavours because that's the nature of the beast, but we are trying, and it is an evolutionary process, but we are trying to, how do we speak as one voice back to you and give you a common process? So, opportunity small business we talk about there, and reasonable but not excessive profit. I think that's unfair, because I reflect on my days at AZ. The account manager came in and said, this was before the big Sodexo deal, it was something else. So very specific office in our estate, non-UK, and said, I have a percentage margin, you asked me to reduce my cost. Every time I reduce my cost, my percentage goes down, and my boss measures me on my percentage. If you went fixed margin, I can halve your costs and I look like a star. Yeah? And you go, oh yeah. And it's only with those sort of very simple collaborative conversations that sometimes we all forget to have. I made this guy, it didn't halve his costs and it didn't double his margin, but it made it a lot healthier for him because his boss didn't measure him on absolute profitability. And it's only understanding some of that stuff that you actually get anywhere. And I had a great time. I had 20% cost reduction, so my boss was chuffed to bits. And it was through all those innovative conversations. We didn't just do it and hack away the service, but it's understanding what some of those levers are. Have you brewed? No. Wasn't sure. We've only got half an hour. Maybe one of those cups of tea. So, we talked earlier about pre-market engagement and contract supply management. So pre-market engagement, this is our DNA diagram, obvious. We were not great at pre-market engagement. We were great at running very detailed processes. We were great at coming up with great frameworks, and they were great frameworks. So my father's been a customer of them for many years. He used to be the head of procurement for the Merseyside Fire Brigade. So he said the deals, when they worked, were great. But nobody ever said to me, does this work for you? So it's much heavy investment in the front end. So, for example, we recently let the FM framework. Prior to that, we had a number of customer days. We had a number of supplier days. We had a number of conference calls. When it launched, we had a supplier day where we got everybody together, strategic and non, so all the successful parties and the customers in one room to say, okay, we're now going to go to market. Does this work for you? Does it not? What are the changes? And over, it was a 2-year period for various reasons that we procured the framework, but there was significant customer and supplier engagement, and it continues. So in project management, recently had a session with the suppliers where on a collaborative basis, they said to us, please don't go out to market in November. We all want a Christmas and we all want a New Year. And you say, fair enough. But because you're trying to hit timelines and you think, okay, it's the right thing to do. Actually, the supplier's feedback is it doesn't. The customer's feedback are, I can wait a month or two because I get a better outcome. And it's only understanding, the supplier said, there's Crossrail 2, there's the refurbishment of the Palace of Westminster, and there's HS2 that will be bidding at the same time. You're going to get half an answer. We won't be able to put the A-team on it. If you wait till January, you probably will. We went, great, positive message. Go back to the customers and say, does this work for you? Can you wait? And they said, well, if we get a better solution over 4 years, 4-year framework, then waiting a month, great. But it is that collaborative conversations and those open conversations and the marketplace feeling that they can come back to us and say, that doesn't work. Yep, you're crazy. And maybe historically we haven't done that. And it's actually about us being open to that. And I have a thing when people say, I'm unique or I know better. Well, there are 6 billion people out there who may have the answer for you. Yeah. So there's probably somebody out there who's got a better idea, and it's about listening and understanding that. So that's our pre-market engagement. We see that as a significant investment in time. So 6-12 months out of us doing any deal, be that a framework, direct contract, we see to start that process. to ensure that whatever we end up with is fit for purpose for both the marketplace and the customer base. So we're trying to simplify process. You know, we talk about collaboration. We get a lot of feedback on our procurement processes, as you can imagine. And as I said before, some of it's law, some of it isn't. So we get a lot of feedback through either our clarification process or just direct. And we've set up I'll talk about our strategic supplier relationship management program, but we've set that up where we're getting a lot of that feedback on a quarterly, monthly basis to say, we think you can do things differently. And the contract supplier management, so that's our phase 3. We see that as National Audit Office were very specific about 12 months ago about government's ability to manage contracts. And as a lot of us know in the room, once you've run a procurement process, actually it's 4 to 5 years, the contract, can be even longer. Some of the big PFIs are 15, 20 years. Actually managing that, and by managing I mean, together rather than hitting people on KPIs, about actually really learning how you evolve the service, evolve the contract, and working together with the supply base. That's a huge piece of where you have to collaborate together, a huge piece of where you have to find all the ideas and be open to them, and and encourage some of your own customers to be open to them where previously they haven't. We have a slight perfect storm with our spending review coming up and the deficit, that people are much more open to ideas because they have to be. It's the only way to change the delivery of service. But that collaboration, which is theme for today, as we move into a world-class, and we've recently just won an award from the Institute of Contract Management, as we turn up these contract management processes, so with our strategic suppliers, then we hope that we will see that collaboration and that idea. So one last week, energy company said government could save £20 million, central government. So £20 million, so I always equate this in nurses. So imagine how many nurses you could buy for £20 million, or soldiers or police officers. So said how? He said, if you just turn off your lights and your heating on your public holidays. And I just looked at them and said, sorry? He said, yep, you spent £20 million last year on heating and lighting the Whitehall estate. And I just went, okay. So the Whitehall, so I use the Whitehall estate as in the government, so the central government estate. And you just go, what do we need to do? Well, we've got a BMS system, we can send you signals, or you could just do it and ask your FM provider to do it. You go, it's a good idea, that. And previously they'd have been nervous about saying that because there's always been a view ministers want the building lit and heated. Actually, there's open-mindedness to these changes. That's a very simple change to make for £20 million. Now, if anybody this the thing, if somebody gives you 10% of it, you don't use word only. So if somebody goes, it's only £20 million. I'll give you 10% of it in your paycheck this month. Okay, suddenly it's not only £20 million. So, and we're lucky that some of the numbers we deal with are huge. It's frightening, but at the same time, you can drive massive benefit and drive nurses, soldiers, police officers, frontline services. So this is an example of a supplier ecosystem. So this is about saying to suppliers and customers, let's share some behaviours. So it's the soft stuff. So I know some of us will talk about this at work, and some of us will, maybe be reluctant to it, or what's the phrase? Anyway, this is, and we're going to kick this off in FM with our energy providers, some of the construction companies / property, and the FM team. So to say, okay, how do we, with our customers in the room as well, say these are the problems government is facing, and how do we live these behaviours, and how do we, as an ecosystem of suppliers who are all about the property asset, fix the problem? So, I don't know, savings will be one of them, public service delivery will be another, estate rationalisation will be another. So with the customers in the room, be it from wider public sector or central government, and they're all going to be invited. End of November is the plan. We're just trying to find a venue. We don't have much money. So, but saying things like this, so this is hopefully enlightening, fix first, settle later. So if you're at DSTL, which is a laboratory that the MOD own on the south, the south coast, which houses various noxious substances, fix first and settle later is important. Because actually, that asset breaking, probably, you don't want to change note, you don't want to, oh, are you okay if we just go and do this? It's the, how do you do this? Yep, and it's done great today, Serco, the current provider, but it's the, how do we put that mindset into some of our behaviours that we work with? And how do we get suppliers collaborating together? So I'll give you an example, AZ, FM provider, and Dalkia, who run the steam. Actually, how do we get them to collaborate when we had a massive steam leak? One of the ducts went, And actually, it wasn't a, are you okay for this? Let's negotiate the price to do it. It was, let's work in a mature way and just fix the problem. So when you talk about how do we get customer innovation in the room, actually you start to live some of these behaviours and you start to get some of the supply base and customers actually thinking as one team, which they do, a lot do. Debbie's here from MOJ. So, it really does happen, but how do we do it consistently? You've just got to do it. The other piece is we need to understand what their key outcomes are. So if I go and speak to St Helens Council, their key outcomes, employability, social responsibility, yeah, they have a budget challenge, but actually that side, as well as their members getting re-elected, is what's key to them. And it's very different for certain CG departments. It's even different within central government departments, as you can imagine. Yeah. So it's actually about translating it into the right language. That's how you get the innovation embedded. Because as we all know, there are certain things that makes our hearts go, forget our heads, but there's certain things that make me go, yeah, I really believe in that. And it's actually translating it into that right language. So, work in collaborative manner can unlock the greatest level of cost of service. We all know this, but it's it's an easy thing to say. So how do we do it? Yeah, look at the ecosystem option. How do you live some of those behaviours? How do you work together? I have this thing, 6 billion people out there. You aren't unique, even though we all think we're unique. I've worked with some of the most complex people in the world. It's the same business challenges we all face every day. It's difficult, it's complex, but it's the same challenge when you really wind it back. So sometimes step away from it and go, actually, I'm not unique. Somebody out there will have done this before or have thought about it. So help me out. Challenge your procurement commercial function. It is our job to bring you the ideas from the marketplace. It is our job to bring the innovation when we can. It is our job to make sure that you're getting best value for money. So challenge us. If you're not, give us a kick, make sure we are doing, because that's our job. Our job is not to go and buy pencils cheaper. We've been buying pencils for years, we don't want to do it anymore. Yeah, our job is to, assure supply, drive value, drive demand management. So challenge your procurement function if you're not doing today. Formalise supplier engagement, make it a quarterly or monthly process and do it properly. It's a 2-3 hour session. Where are we? What are the ideas? Talk about KPIs, but actually talk about innovation and collaborate together. Yeah, make sure you do it. Make sure it's not one of those things that's cancelled because something else more important has come up. So for those of the, obviously, who aren't suppliers, to collaborate, you must be the customer of choice, not the customer of dread. And this is the last thing, yeah? Those are your customers and for suppliers, yeah? You will not get the A team if everybody goes. So I used to work for Accenture, management consultancy company. There were certain clients you never wanted to work with. And when you did get them, you thought, oh, I'm probably out the door, yeah? Because you want the low performers because you've been given them. So, yeah, and it's key this. Be the customer of choice. Be the one that people are fighting over with their bosses to come and work with. And if you're not, question why not, and ask the supplier in an open forum, why aren't I? Because if you look at your team and think, I've not got the A team here, go and ask them why not. Cool, that was it. Thank you.